How's everybody doing? Good? I get you right before our break, so I need to captivate you for a good 10 minutes. A little bit about the AIE, which was mentioned. The Applied Innovation Exchange was born out of the idea of solving complex problems of today with emerging technology like AI. And I get the pleasure to do this with my co-lead, Graham Taylor, who's also going to be doing a talk about machine economy. But what problem is as complex as ethics? And what problem is as complex as ethics in the context of AI? And it got me thinking about a particular quote, which is, just make sure the clicker works, that AI is really the race between the power of technology and the power of our wisdom to manage it. And this was said by Max Tegmark, and he's an AI researcher, MIT physicist. And when I read that, it kind of sounds like some of these lessons learned in storytelling, right? Like, with great responsibility, and with great power comes great responsibility, right? Or be careful what you wish for. And so it reminded me of a specific tale. The quote's back there, but it reminded me of a specific tale, which is one that Disney popularized. It actually was based on a poem in the 1800s. It was based on The Sorcerer's Apprentice. So if you guys are familiar with the Disney film Fantasia, I'm going to take you back there for a moment. So, Mickey decides, I don't want to drag a pail of water and fill up a cauldron. It's a boring task. It's a chore I don't want to do. As an apprentice, he decides to try his magic a little bit too early. He enchants the broom, he directs him what to do, and he thinks he's got it done. But what happened is the broom is thinking of different ways in which it's going to fill this cauldron. And it ends up flooding the workshop, right? And Mickey's like, oh no, I've got to take an axe, I'm going to stop this from happening. And what happens is the broom is split into all these pieces, replicates itself, and does it again. I bring this story because, interestingly, there are actually researchers looking at this type of problem. So at the fullest extent, when it's looking at superhuman intelligent AI, there are actual researchers from DeepMind, something called MIRA, which is the Machine Institute of Research. They're looking at how to create what they call the red button, the big red button to stop this from happening. And it's a lot harder than it looks. It actually involves a lot of equations because when you create an open-ended goal and a very intelligent artificial intelligence, it will find ways to subvert your big red button. It will delete it. It will find a way to hide it, because in the end of the day, it will prevent itself from achieving its objective. On the left side, which I think is even more fascinating, is the challenge that they're looking at in terms of values. How could I possibly define the values that are reflective of this task? Filling a cauldron is not kind of easy. It gets a lot more complicated for the things that we want to do. But how do I then embed that into an algorithm? So I wanted to give you a fantasy, but really say that it's starting to be ingrained in how we think about AI of the future. But I don't want to speak in just terms of magic, it feels. That is in the furthest end of the spectrum when it comes to machine learning and intelligence. There's 3 types of AI. Ron mentioned definitions. I don't want to get wrapped up in it as well. But when we look at human level and superhuman level AI, there are lots of smart people thinking about it. And they're thinking about it in terms of value alignment, and they're thinking about it in terms of safety. I'm just having the guys help me click on this. Just a couple more clicks. I want to focus on the AI of today. And we'd be really clear here. There's no human level AI right now, and there's no super intelligent AI right now. These are decades out. Okay? And when I say that, it means reasoning at a level beyond what we do today. We want to focus on narrow AI, and that is this area that we have image recognition, autonomous vehicles, your spam filters even. This is a narrow application of AI that we're using today. And my question is, with all these brilliant minds thinking about the things on the right, what are we doing to make AI equitable, just, and fair? So now I'm going to ask a couple questions from you guys. I was counting how many applications I think are powered by AI. I think it's about 13 to 20. 2/3 of people don't even think they use AI today, and they're wrong. How many of you believe the AI that you're using day to day is equitable, fair, and not biased? Hands up that you're certain. Okay. How many of you believe that the AI you're applying in your organizations today, you're doing everything you can to also make it equitable, fair, and just? Hands up. Okay. And I don't think it's because we don't want to. I think it's that it's hard. So let's go to the next slide. And a couple more clicks. I need to ensure that I challenge my assumptions when I'm on stage. I need to know that you think this is a problem. I need you to think that we can solve this problem. And I need to think that, in the last click, that why aren't we? There's probably many reasons. I'm going to offer two. For the next slide, and a couple more clicks. First, machine learning models form predictions. That's what they do. They are predictors. They make predictions, and it will be biased. So my question is, how do you understand those biases? It is a responsibility for us to understand those biases, but it's very difficult when we don't know they're biased within ourselves. My colleague Kathy from IDEON will be talking a little bit more about human bias. I won't take her storm, but I will give you an illustrative example. There's this science behind how we form a habit. The habit is usually a cue, a trigger from the environment or emotions. We will then act on it in some kind of a routine, and then we will have a reward, and we'll do that loop again. And they say around average of 66 loops, and you will just do it automatically. 1/3 of your waking life is an autopilot. So if that's true, and we're feeding the engine of AI with all our brilliant behaviors and data, what of that 1/3 do we really understand? Second point that I'll say is a really big challenge is that, and Ron mentioned it, let's be honest, AI is only going to be as good as the quantity and the quality of the data you feed it. Doesn't mean that the historical data or the present data is reflective of the future we want to live in. If I took the data of 20 years ago, I don't think you'd be particularly happy with what it might produce. So now we have to plan for the future with only the data from the past. I'll give two examples of this. It's also very concerning if we know the data is being gathered in a discriminatory way. And that's the case with reoffenders in the criminal justice system. If you take all that data, there might be high-pressure situations or reasons why certain decisions were made. Same thing with repayment of loans. We kind of design things for our own benefit, but is that for the benefit of society? Okay. So I like to provoke the team. So we were doing a brainstorm on the AI hackathon that we were doing, which, by the way, I really encourage you to check out our demos. And I said, guys, I really want to develop an AI that can detect bias. I mean, wouldn't that be great to solve for that? And then I want to be able to model and simulate the consequences of that bias, because I want to understand this neural net. I want to know what's going in the black box. Can we do that? And we always try to do things in weeks, but I can't solve for ethics in weeks, can we? But very timely for this conference, just a couple of weeks ago, on the next slide, Google just launched a what-if model for their machine learning models. For the first time, if you are a non-coder, you can go in and visualize your data. You can begin to understand how diverse is your data set. If I deleted one data point, does that change the prediction greatly? Do I have very different predictions for marginalized communities? So now we can start asking questions. No more excuses of I'm not sure why. We can now start to interrogate and probe the information we have. We can start to ask questions. No sooner did they launch this, IBM also came out with its own kind of interrogation model. And again, this is for non-coders, and this is important because I think more than developers need to be part of this conversation. On to the next slide. I think it's a bit ironic that I have two hopes in this endeavor. And one is that in the process of encoding ethics, we might start to decode who we are. We might start to understand ourselves a little bit better. And yes, we're going to get smarter, but I also hope that we start to enhance our sense of morality. There's a second hope, which is, it's great that you find this talk interesting, but I really, really want is that some of you decide to act on some of the ethics within the organization that you're working in. And when I say act on it, I'll give you specific examples. There's no reason why we can't define what we consider a value statement in your project. There's no reason why we can't define what those outcomes are. We can test, assumptions should be tested, scenarios should be modeled, and values should be upheld. I think the last thing is I talked about that parable, right? That potentially technology will outpace our wisdom to manage it. I think we are in an era where we might be able to be on par. But that means that we must see ethics as more than just a necessity. We need to see it as action. Thank you.